Welcome to Conversations with Kara-Leah, where we take a nuanced deep dive into all things related to spirituality, sexuality, power, and awakening. My name is Kara-Leah, and I'm your host for this journey. I invite you to relax back, open up, and get curious. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the love. Welcome to a Conversation with Kara-Leah, where we are back on the couch because I am talking to someone in person. So freaking excited. Today, the woman I have for you is Laura Sharp. She is a poet. I think I first met her at improv, and it's just been one of those girl mances where you're like, oh my God, I think I know you already. And we actually just discovered that we both have Leo suns and Scorpio ascendants, so that may be something to do with why we've just vibed and connected. But Laura has written this amazing book of poetry called Places You Catch Yourself. And it just blows me away because, like, when was the last time you ever bought a poetry book? Me? Probably never. But I have been at so many places in Squamish, and I've been in there and someone comes in and they buy her book and they buy her book and they buy her book. And I'm watching her book fly out the door. And then I was commissioned to write a review on it for the Whistler Writers Festival, and I was like, oh my God, no wonder this poetry book is flying off the shelves. So I thought you might like to meet Laura as well. So with no further ado, I get to welcome her onto the couch. I wish we had a band to bring you on. Laura Sharp, come on down.
Yay! Woohoo!
Oh my God.
Here we are.
Thanks for being the first person to guest star on the podcast on the couch here in Squamish.
I'm stoked, and you're cool setup, and we've got the mountains in the background, and you in all your glory, power. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So tell us, I don't actually know that much about you.
Yeah.
Beside the fact that you write amazing poetry, and you're also the host of Poet Next Door, which is a monthly event here in Squamish, which is incredible. So give us a rundown, because you're not from Canada. Methinks me hears an accent.
Yes. So I guess I'm from Scotland in terms of what it traditionally means to be from somewhere. Mostly brought up in Scotland. But as the book says in the intro, I've had 30 different addresses and as many different years. My dad was in the military.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we moved around a bunch as a kid.
And in Scotland or elsewhere?
Scotland, England, Wales, Germany. I was born out in Germany. So
you were born in Germany?
I was born in Germany. Yeah, we're gonna learn so much.
Oh my God, this is great. I'm already learning things.
Yeah, so Germany, and then I only lived there for a year as a kid. So yeah.
So no memories of?
No memories, no language, no nothing. Just That's it.
So how did you end up in Canada?
So I came out here with my two best friends when we graduated university. We were like, right, we're not quite ready for proper jobs yet, so let's go do a snow season. And then my friend decided on Whistler, and I was like, cool, I'm coming for the ride. So came, did the whole 2-year party scene, all the random jobs,
Oh, I know. I know.
know.
Yeah. I did 7 years.
Yeah. I did it so well the first 2 years, I feel like I don't need to do it again.
Oh, so damn.
But yeah, did those 2 years and then couldn't get Canada on my head when I moved back home. It was
so you did go home after that?
Did go home, not by choice. My visa expired. So it was one of those where I was like, just have to go, and spent almost the whole time in Scotland trying to figure out how I was going to get back. It was a big thing. I really just felt like I was meant to be here. Life made sense in a way that I'd never felt before. And a part of me wondered if it was the party scene and all the different elements within that, if that was what made sense.
Yeah.
Or if it was something deeper, and I didn't know what it was, but I was like, I need to go back and figure it out. Yeah.
So you made it back? I
made it back, yeah. It took a long time to figure it out, but every time I sat in meditation, every time I was still with myself, it was just it was here. It was here. It was, it was like I was meant to come back. Yeah.
So when did you start writing Places You Catch Yourself? Were you back already?
So that came, it was maybe like March 2020.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'd written poetry.
You guys remember March 2020?
I'm sure we all do. So I wasn't like identifying as a poet or like this is what I do. It was just in the quiet of the pandemic that started to make sense in a way of just like bringing in the threads of this crazy world and just trying to figure it out by myself. So that's where the poetry came. And then the name for that book, it was on my vision board then, like March 2020, it came up around that time. I didn't have enough poems to write a book. I didn't even know, I knew nothing, apart from just little bits that were coming out.
Had you studied poetry? Had you read a lot of poetry?
No.
Oh my God, I love that.
No,
hadn't
nothing.
Studied it, hadn't read it, just started writing awesome poetry.
We'll talk about imposter syndrome when this comes out, right? That's a whole other thread. But
okay, let's hit pause on that because I think we need to give the people a taste.
Yeah.
I've used deity stickers as bookmarks.
I love that. I saw that.
So choose.
Oh, I'm reading. Okay.
Yeah, you can read one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. This is how I first met Laura, was at a reading where I got to hear her read her thing. And I'm like, this woman reads really well.
This is exciting for me because I don't know which ones you've marked.
Oh. I mean, you can read anyone. You don't
I
have
know,
to
no,
read.
but I like this idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one right here. Why do I feel like I'm living on borrowed time? Like the seconds passing aren't actually mine. That they're just an inconvenient layover between places that matter. That they're just a step you can't skip to get to what's next. That if they're not built on productivity, then you are settling for less. Oh, I know that feeling so well.
Right.
That your future won't be stable because you don't have enough foresight, enough vision to propel you to the next stage. Gripping at numbers and convoluted words on a page as though they're the key to liberate you from this paper-thin cage. Ooh. I feel like these are just in my bones now. I'm reading it. I'm like, I know this.
You know this, right?
I know this already.
I love that, being liberated from this paper-thin cage and the moments don't count unless they're productive.
Oh man, that's... I'd had strands of that poem before the whole poem actually came to me of just the way I'm living doesn't make sense. I constantly feel like I'm behind. I constantly feel like I don't do enough. I constantly feel like I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Right? And it's this constant chasing and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And writing that liberated me in a way where okay, that's not actually the full truth. It's just words, right? And it just it lets you step outside of it, and it's oh, okay, that's not it. That's not it.
So do you still feel like that now? Do you still have that sense of trying to get somewhere, busyness, productiveness, or has it lessened?
It depends how much coffee I drink. It depends how caffeinated I am.
Yeah.
I was literally writing a poem this morning on that not enoughness.
Yeah.
It finds me every month at very specific days.
Uh-huh.
And it's sneaky too. It sneaks in, and right now it's sneaking into me in a spiritual practice way. Right? You're not doing enough meditating, you're not nourishing your body enough, it's sneaky how it gets in like that. And yeah.
So when it comes up and you notice it, do you believe it still? Or do you catch it?
Right? Yeah, honestly, some days it catches me, and not in a good way too. It's all consuming, and I'm like, no, this is the truth. I'm not right. And then as soon as I put pen to paper, I can almost write my way out of it again. And it's okay, no, that's not the way. It just comes back to that same thread, and every time I get a deeper understanding of it, and yeah.
So in a way, writing the poetry, it sounds like it liberates you from conditioning.
It does. Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah. I love it.
I could have just wrote that.
It's one of the themes of the podcast.
Yeah.
Because one of the things you teach yoga, right? And tell us a little bit about your yoga journey.
Yeah, so yoga again, I was practicing somewhat before the pandemic, but then in Scotland we had a really serious lockdown where you were only allowed outside for 1 hour a day, and Like, yeah, it was kind of wild. So yeah, I started like deepening my practice at that time, not really knowing what I was doing, but just knowing that it felt good and it was something my body felt like it needed.
And were you like doing your own practice from memory? Were you using YouTube?
I was using YouTube videos, yeah, and I was really drawn to like yin yoga. It just seemed, that stillness and that like, it just seemed like such a contrast to how my actual life had been up until that point. It's like the antidote to everything. Well, like that poem, right? The productivity and the pushing. And there's so many moments where like you're in an asana or a pose for a long time and like you get a little like moment of truth or something comes through, and that's what so much of this was built on too, was those little moments.
So were you practicing yoga and then writing poetry?
Yeah. Like together, but like not even understanding, right? Like some people like take a journal to your yin class and like write some things down, but really if you want to write poetry, just go to a yin class.
Go do like, yin.
Yeah, just go sit in yin and listen. Like it's all listening. This is the thing, like in poetry everyone's like, oh, like I always thought of it as like a pushing and like this output and this like, when I thought of like traditional poetry. But for me, it's like it's a listening. It's just a listening.
So do you get like really quiet and then you hear the words arise? Yeah. And then
you know, because you felt it too, right?
Yeah, I mean, totally. Like I'm in the process right now of like writing a novel. Yeah. And I feel a little bit like I'm pushing. And then last night, this character, she just started talking to me. I'm like, you're not my novel.
Where did you come from?
Where did you come from? And maybe you need to be spoken into the world.
Right?
And
it's just the reverse of everything you've been taught, that like to get something good or get something precious, like you have to push and you have to like, but honestly, it's for me in the moments of pulling back is where it comes. And it's such a funny little like...
So there you are, March 2020, you're doing a bunch of yin yoga, you're starting to write poetry, you've never really read poetry, you haven't studied poetry, but the poems have chosen you.
They've chosen me for some weird reason,
So then, when did you have a sense of like, oh, there's enough poems, or this needs to be a book? Like, how did you get to the book part?
Yeah, so that, like I said, like that title went on my vision board of like, I don't even know how, I don't know when, but just this.
So you even knew back in March 2020 that this was the title for a book of poetry.
This was the book. Yeah. Maybe having like 2 poems in the bag at this time.
Are you?
Wait, sorry. What was the question?
So then you're there, March 2020. When did the book then start to like? Because you self-published, right?
Yeah.
So how did you go, right, I'm going to do this thing, and how did you figure it all out?
It's actually happening. Yeah. It kept coming up on my vision board year after year, and I watched everything else come true, and that was the one thing. And my big hesitation was like, I'm not self-publishing. I was like, I'm not self-publishing. I've done so much of this by myself. I want someone beside me to do this, right? Almost to like hold my hand, or like a mentor, or I don't know if that's what traditional publishers are, probably not. Maybe I just need help. Yeah,
you'll probably find out at some point.
Yeah, I hope so.
You will.
So yeah, I was just trying to figure that out, and then eventually I had other things going on. I was training as a breathwork coach. I was wanting to start in like events and retreat spaces, and this just would not leave me. It wouldn't leave me. It wouldn't leave me. And it almost got to the point, it's like, since I've been back in Squamish and actually being kind of still enough for a long time. And I was like, I just need to do this for the sake of doing it at this point. So I can make space for other stuff.
Yeah, kind of like, get it off your plate almost. Be like, okay, you're done.
I think I had it on my like Tinder bio, or no, it was Hinge, where it asked me the questions. It's like, what's a lifelong goal? And mine was like, oh, to write a poetry book. And I'm like, I might just talk about this, and I could have too, because these things are never done.
Yeah.
You know too, like I could just talk about it for the next 30 years, but it was almost like a necessity of like, this has to move so that other things can come.
So you just figured out how to lay it out yourself and how to do all the things, and did you use Amazon?
Amazon, KDP.
Good old KDP.
Yeah. I had a day where I was just like, I didn't leave the house that day, and I leave the house every day, and I was like, I'm just staying inside today, and I just got super, super quiet, and I was like, I can fucking do this. I was like, I can do this, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I know the next step. Right, so I was just getting little glimmers of the next step. Honestly, and
that's all you need.
And everyone says it too, right? But I'm like, I don't know how to design a front cover. I'm not an artist. I'm kind of useless with computers. Like, I'm not the most organized person. Like, so the idea of this, I'm just like.
And somehow. And it's a beautiful little amazing book as well. And like I said, it's so sparse the way you've laid it out.
Yeah.
It's spacious. It's got that feeling of space. I think we need another poem.
Another poem?
Yeah, I'm going to read one.
Oh yes, please do. I'm going to sip water while you do it.
Yeah. You have some water. Everyone else can settle in. Okay. Let's go. What have we got here? Ooh, I like this one. This one speaks to some experiences that I've had.
Ooh.
It's easy to love her, right? Beautiful, bright teeth, white, makeup applied. I love her with ease too. But there's another buried in the rubble, covered in stubble, dry, bloody, bloated, in pain, greasy hair, dirty underwear. She hides behind closed doors where we cover up mirrors and board up the windows, and the wind blows howling. Reveal yourself. She deserves to breathe too. She deserves to eat too. Feast too. Without hungry eyes upon you, you will not disappear, my dear. Reveal yourself. It's easy to love her, right? Beautiful, bright. But the skeletons in the closet are running out of clothes to wear. And the wind blows. She's screaming now. Give me the bones of you. Reveal yourself. I freaking love that, right? Yeah. Like, I've been in relationships where I've felt like they love the bright me, but not the greasy hair, insecure, whatever, fearful me.
Yes.
And it's such this like this feeling of having to be one version of me only in order to retain the love, you know?
And the realization from that poem for me was because I can't expect anyone else to love her when I don't love her.
Ooh.
Right? Like, yeah. That was the thing, because I didn't. And I don't know if I fully do either. And it's that, like, we have a lot of awareness, like self-love, and this whole world right now is getting spoken around a lot, but it's conditional still, you know? Like, it's I'm not going to speak for everyone, but for me, like, I do sometimes only love myself when I'm in my full radiance and my full brightness and that full, well, like Leo energy, right? But that Scorpio, that darkness, that like where you need to go to be able to come back out. And I'm like, oh, like, yeah, how much do I love her? And that poem taught me not that much. I have a lot of work to do. And that's sometimes what happens. It comes out and I'm like, oh shit.
So the poems kind of point the way as well.
Yeah. And I wrote that in my house here in Squamish. Like, that was recent. I thought the book was done, and then that came through.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like I say, I've literally been at a cafe and watched someone pick up your book, flick through, read a poem, and then they buy it.
Yeah.
You know, and
it fills me up so much.
I know, right? And these are people at a cafe buying a coffee. And the thing about, because I've had experiences where I've put books in different places, and I just discovered that they don't really sell when people are not in the mindset of buying a book.
Right? Interesting.
Yeah. But yours is different. Because it just touches that emotion, and people are like, oh, she's speaking to me. She gets me. I want to find out what else is in here.
What else is there?
Yeah, which is pretty special.
It feels very cool to hear you say that. But that was the, like, I mean, when you talk about the next step, like, I didn't ever know where that was going to go, or like, you know, any big retailers or anything like that. I was like, okay, like I know the coffee shops I like around here. I know, I know that's where I can see them. Okay, so let's do that. And then maybe it stops there. Maybe we do something more from there. Like, but that was like my first vision of like it being there and people waiting for their coffee and picking it up and being like, oh.
So were you like vision led from that perspective then? You would actually kind of see that happening and go, okay, I'll do that.
I guess so. Never thought about that.
Yeah, because I know when I published my books, that was not necessarily what was happening. I was more like in that kind of marketing mindset of trying to push.
Yes. Yeah.
And go, oh, I need to get it into yoga studios, or I need to do this, and trying to push it out.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, like 40 Days of Yoga is all about how to show up to yoga practice every day.
Yeah.
So you'd think at a yoga studio it's the ideal audience.
Yes.
But they still didn't really sell that well.
They still didn't?
Nah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so that's like a thing. I got experience in self-publishing and the way books move, and there's something special about your book.
That's cool.
I watch it go out the door and I'm like, how long before somebody picks this up?
Yes, I like that.
Well, who knows, right? So that was your big distribution plan.
That was my big distribution.
Shops.
Get in the coffee shop that I sit in every day, and like, I guess it is. It's just catching people at those moments of like, I work in a coffee shop too. Yeah. So like, you know, I'm very aware that when I'm on the coffee machine or when I'm in work, like I'm serving so many people every day. But for that one person, it's like could be their only conversation all day, right? That might be like the only interaction that they have all day, and like people want that like connection too. And maybe I'm just drawing this parallel now. Maybe like having that, it's catching them at the right time. Like I don't know.
I think that could be a thing. Okay, so when did you publish it? So we're recording this in early November 2024.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. When did you? I can't mean that. I was there at the launch party.
You were there. You were there. June 14th. It was meant to be the 13th. Because again, like these self projects, I'm like, I just need to give myself a deadline. Put myself out on social media of like, I'm writing a book. This is when it's released. Yeah. Everyone, hold me accountable. Otherwise, this is going to roll on for the rest of my life.
It works, right? Using social media for accountability, it's a thing.
Totally. And then I had friends messaging me from back home. They're like, when's your book coming out? Is it out already? And then I had like the proof copies. So I was like reading little snippets from there. And there was no big marketing teaser or anything like that. Like, we'll just give everyone a tease. I was just like, oh fuck, I've got my book. Like, yes, I'm just gonna read a little bit.
How'd that feel, like holding the print proof for the first time?
First time, yeah, pretty surreal. And I had one like this, and then I had like a shiny cover, and I was like trying to decide for ages. And I brought them to my friend, and she's like, "That one looks like a notebook. It's not that one. It's like the shiny one." Right. So she was like, "Nope." But yeah, it felt, I don't know, real. Yeah, it felt real. Yeah. And I think you spend so much time like tapping away on a laptop, and nothing feels like tangible or physical. And then actually having it in my hand, I was like, oh. And then I went and burned it.
The print proof?
Yeah. No, like the actual first copy, like official copy. And I burned it.
Did you do like a little ritual ceremony, or like, what do you mean you burned it?
I was on a date. It was like a first date, and we'd had like a
this is a great story.
Unhinged Laura energy. We'd had like a really nice date, and then we were like talking about going out to this lake and like having a fire. And I was like, oh, I actually have something that I want to burn. And I always knew that for this book, that I just wanted to release it back to wherever it came from, and that was going to be like my catharsis for it.
I love it.
And it just lets go of that like physical, like this needs to do really well, or this has to be a bestseller, or this has to, I'm like, it just is, it just was, it's going to find who it needs to find in the right time.
I love that. The next book I publish,
burn it.
Yeah, I'm going to burn the first copy.
Burn it. Yeah, I mean, I think the guy was sat there like, what is going
Who is this woman I'm on a date with? She's burning a poetry book that she wrote and published.
I think he was like catching on at the same time. He's like, oh, you're burning a book. I'm like, yeah, I just wrote it. He was like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's going to the fire.
I love that. So curious just hearing you speak. I just got a flash there of seeing my novel in book form.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
The creative process is so trippy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see it though? You can feel it?
I just had a sudden just a visual. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I need to start doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then let's go burn it.
And then let's totally go burn it. Let's go burn it. Oh my goodness. I want to read another poem.
Yeah.
Let's read another poem. Because I love the stories behind each one.
Yeah.
My glasses match my...
I know they do. It looks so good.
So good. Alrighty. Let's see what this one is.
This is exciting for me too. I'm like, oh, what did I write?
I am a woman, a force of nature, a force to be reckoned with. Untamed, wild and free, my very body bleeds creativity. My life's duty, tending to the seeds of displaced dreams, trying to birth their way into this life through me. We are not a time bomb. We are living, breathing eternity. I am a woman. Take me back to my roots immediately.
Right now.
Right now. I love that one. Tell me about that one.
Oh, that one. It came in layers. I wrote that in my flat in Glasgow. And yeah, I think I was very much, like that first poem we read, of that feeling of like constantly being behind and that constant pushing. And I'm like, there has to be a better way. And at this time I was like joining like lunar living circles, like moon sister circles, and like really trying to like reconnect back to like the magic of my femininity and like what is the other
wild
way?
Woman.
The wild woman.
Yeah.
And it was just it was trying to reclaim that. I think. And I got the seeds for it in Glasgow. And then as I was editing the book, I changed that last little line because it was almost like softer. It was like, we're not a time bomb, we're living, breathing eternity. I think I ended it there. And then the last line was this demand. It's like, no, take me back. Like, that's where we're going, and do it now. Or I'm taking myself. Yeah.
Do you feel like these are spells?
Oh, that's such a good question. It gives me like goosebumps.
Right? I mean...
Yeah. Do I feel like they're spells? They were never intentionally spells, but I'm learning now within the writing and hindsight and looking back, I'm like, yes. Yes, which comes with its own like responsibility too.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Now that you realize that these are spells and they have a power.
There's so much power.
Yeah, how's the responsibility? How do you see that?
Well, that last one, there's a last poem in there that I write about like the beauty of like teenage female friendships. And I wrote that here in Squamish too. And I think I was just missing that like unconditional love that your friends when you're a teenager have for you, you know? And I was like somewhat dating at the time, and I was struggling to compare that kind of...
The teenage friendship with kind of the dating?
Almost, well, that first love that you feel around your friends at that age, and like comparing that with like what I was willing to stand for with like boyfriends. And it was just, I was kind of playing with that idea, and I started going into this nostalgia and like looking back on those years and like those friendships and what we used to get up to. And then after that, I just had like woman after woman appear in my life of just like literally unreal. Beautiful, beautiful friendships. And I'm like, I feel like I just wrote that into life. With no intention as well. I wasn't like, oh, I'm writing this so I get that.
And I think that's what makes it more powerful, is you're literally expressing a desire in a way. You're really like putting it out there and going, this is my desire, but there's no attachment. And I wonder if that's why what you're doing is so powerful. I mean, you burned your first book. Like, you're naturally orientating to this really, like, as I'm listening to you, this way of being so, not detached, I don't like the word detached, but liberated with it, free with it. You're like, the book just is what it is. It doesn't need to be anything other than what it is. Like, find your way in the world. You know, like, I'm going to keep doing the next step thing. Like, however far that goes, like, I'm going to keep listening and I'm going to keep doing that. But I never wanted it to, like, consume me in a way that was, like...
I want it to feel free. Like that's the whole process of writing, and like that's how I want to feel. I don't want it to feel like a job, and I don't want it to feel heavy and this thing I have to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep listening and do that next thing. I'm not scared of the work, but like I don't want it to overwhelm or like grasp, you know? So
I like that. So your orientation is to freedom.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah, no wonder you and I connected so well. Freedom, baby. Let's go.
Checks out. Yeah.
Okay, so you published in June. And by October, you are on the stage at the Literary Cabaret, which is like the premier event of Whistler Writers Festival.
Yeah.
How'd that come about?
Yeah, so you were there too, but so...
Well, I was meant to be there.
But the open mic at the library that we did.
Right, yes, that's right.
So it was very much, the book had come out, I think the event was like a week later or something.
Right.
And they were doing...
And the event was, it was an open mic up at Whistler.
Yes.
For writers.
Yeah.
And that's where Laura and I more deeply connected.
It was for Whistler Writers Festival.
Yeah, it's like a satellite event, wasn't it? Like
And again, went in with no agenda of any kind, apart from being like, oh, I have like wrote this book, like I'm gonna take it with me, you know? And like, I just read from it. And it was poems that I'd written and performed back in Glasgow. So I used to host a spoken word night back there too. So a lot of what I did, I try to never do it with the book because it's just in there anyway.
Yeah.
And
I love that when you got up and spoke because you just did it off by heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like in there. But also like the spoken word artists in Glasgow are like another level.
Yeah,
so,
I bet.
Like for me stepping into that little world and then everyone's just like reeling it off, I'm like, oh cool, I better get on this train. Yeah. Real fast.
Yeah. Memory, let's go.
Exactly.
Are you working still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that event just felt so good and obviously saw you there. And can I tell the story?
Yeah, tell the story. This is a great story.
It's the best story ever.
Yeah.
So we're in Whistler Library and I've done my set and I've just got up and I see Kara-Leah in the corner. We like connected somewhat in the break.
Yeah.
And we connected once before at improv in Squamish, where I've been like, I feel like I know this lady, but I don't know you because I've only met you once. But there was just this like knowing or this like familiarity, and it was still there even after we spoke. I'm just like, I can't quite like put my finger on it, but whatever. And you go up to the stand and you start talking, and I'm still, I think I just performed, so I'm still like a little like bubbly as well, like the bubbles are like, yeah. And then you start speaking and you're talking about a book and I hear your accent for what seemed like the first time.
Interesting.
And it suddenly clicks on and I'm like, something in my brain starts to shift. And then you say your full name, which I feel like I'd never heard before. And then you say you're the author of Sex, Drugs and Mostly Yoga. And I just sit there and I'm like, you have got to be joking me. I actually swore, which I won't do again. But the people in the seat in front of me turned around. They were like, are you okay? They were like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm good. Like, sorry. But the whole roundabout craziness of this is when I first got back to Whistler. I lived there once in my early 20s and again now, moved back in 2022. I spent a lot of time at the library and I saw your book on the shelf and it was one of those just aimlessly scrolling. I'm like, something catch me, like I need something here. And I see the title, I'm like, this is for me.
Yeah, Sex, Drugs and Mostly Yoga.
This is me, this is where life's at right now. I pick up your book, I read it in the exact same library that me and you were then performing in. Take it home. I'm living with like mostly guys at the time. They're like, oh, like what's this book about then? Like, I'm not usually into yoga, but this sounds good. I'll read it after you.
Oh, that's so funny.
But yeah, just this crazy. And I remember writing you out this email because we'd like worked in the same nightclub when you lived in Whistler.
Which one? Like,
Tommy Africa's. Yeah, I worked in there as well. Yeah. So we'd worked in the same nightclub. We'd been to Shambhala. You were a server. Like
all these parallels.
All these things, and even like there was so many. I don't think I've told you this, but there were so many little like strands of your book that even in the years after would like find me. Like I remember washing my hands with like cold water to like that. I always thought about that on like a busy serving shift, and like. Yeah, it would just like come back.
And this is 2022.
that you were reading.
Yes.
Yeah, and I published it in 2018 about events in Whistler from like 2000 to 2004. Yeah.
It's so crazy. But I remember that very first page, and even reading a book in a library and knowing it's set in the same town that you're in is a trip.
Yeah.
Right? And then I start going and I'm like, oh, and we work there together, and like da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, is this woman talking right to my soul? Like, what's going on?
Right.
But I wrote you this big email and I never sent it. And then, well, luckily I got to tell you all the things afterwards. So
Yeah.
it's fine. But that was like, if you talk about like universal signs or just like, there's...
I just love that story. And the fact that you wrote the email, you never send it, and then 2 years later I show up at the same event as you.
In the same place where I picked up your book and read it. Like, it's just so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it too.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like if you're a writer or you're a creator, you know, like my book has not sold, I don't know, it might have sold 1,000 copies or so, like it hasn't sold a huge amount, etc. However, it's not the number of copies.
Right?
You just never ever know what impact your art is going to have on one person that could completely change their lives, their descendants' lives, the shape of history, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And even just like the little one-liners in there, like they stick and they become part of you too, right? Like they actually do. And yeah, you might never ever see that or feel it.
Yeah.
Or know about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the beauty of art. It's just like, that's why you just have to do it.
Yeah. And
right?
letting go of the idea of what success looks like for art, because we do live in a culture and a society that is so much about, you know, being the number one seller, rah.
Oh, that first poem, right? It's that push and that like, it has to be this way, it's going this way, like da-da-da. And it's like, no, this is magic. Like, let it weave itself in.
Which brings us back to your writing spells that then generate reality.
I'm writing spells, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like with that memoir, I needed to write it to lay it to rest. It's like I needed to write it out so I could just put a ribbon around that part of my life and just be like, it's done.
It's done.
It's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it feel like that?
Oh my God, it did.
Yeah.
And which is one reason why it was somewhat challenging to promote it in a way, because it was like, okay, that's done. It's just so done.
Yeah. And then you feel like you have to keep like, or like the work starts once it's published.
Yeah.
And then you have to like, especially for something like a memoir, which is so, and especially your story too, which is so deeply like personal, to then go to bookshops, like, here's my heart.
I know. I struggled with it. And
mate, I would as well.
Yeah. And I think the big thing I'm taking away from listening to you is like, on my book launch day, I remember getting invited up on stage to speak, and I got up and I had a few books to give away. Yeah. And that Red Hot Chili Peppers song, give it away now. You know, it just started, and I started riffing on it, and I just had this profound sense with this book, I'm meant to just give this book away.
Oh.
But I didn't fully listen to it or act on it, you know?
Yeah.
But it was just this
it
was just this sense of the way the song just channeled through.
Yeah.
And I do feel like with my writing process is that I'm loving interacting with you around this, and I'm feeling like, letting go more and attuning to the magic and really recognizing that sometimes things just need to be written.
Yeah, right? Like,
they just need to be written or voiced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just need to move.
Yeah, they just need to move. Yeah. And when I reflect on the pieces of work that I've done, that have written, like I wrote a screenplay when I was living in Whistler.
Yeah.
And it just poured out of me.
Yeah.
And it was about two sisters aged like 8 and 12, you know, and I have a sister who's 4 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until many years later that I realized that I had unknowingly written a psychological metaphor for her and I. And it was like, oh my goodness. That screenplay went on to win an award.
It did.
But at the time, I just wanted to write. I was just letting the writing write me.
Yes. Right?
Right?
Like,
yeah.
And what a beautiful practice in surrender too, of just like, move through me.
Move through me. I love that.
I dropped off these books in at the Moore Young Arts Centre recently, and there was like an older lady that I dropped them off to.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, I was like, I'm just restocking. And she was like, okay, great. She's like kind of looking at the books. And she's like, oh, she's like, it's poetry. She's like, no one really writes that anymore. And and I was like, oh yeah, like, I guess I do. And what did she say as I was leaving? It was like, what did she say? It was something along the lines of like, thank you for looking after it, or thank you for like carrying it on, or something. It
like
was,
the spark of poetry.
Yeah, it was. Like my reply was just like, no, like it catches me.
Yeah.
Right? Like
yeah,
it catches me, and that was it's surrender. I think that's what it is.
Art is surrender.
It's pure surrender.
Show up and surrender to the art, and let it take you. Let it have its way with you.
Who says it? The Morning Pages.
Julia
Cameron. Yeah, she's like, you take care of the quantity, and the quality will get taken care of. So it's like, just do it. Just do it. Yeah. And like the quality is going to take care of itself. And I'm just like, cool. That. I can just write. Like, yeah. Even if it's not good, I'll just do it.
And like, I started writing poetry last year or the year before, and I'd never written poetry. I've never really read poetry, never studied poetry.
Yeah, no.
But it was just a way for me to make sense of what I was feeling. I used to write articles to do the same thing. Yeah. But it was like my concentration span got smaller.
Right.
And poems are much shorter and more direct.
Yes.
Yeah, and then when I did a spoken word last year, it felt so incredible. Yeah. Like one of the most me things I'd ever done.
Huh.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting, hey?
Yeah.
So coming now here and discovering there's this thriving poetry scene.
Right.
In this mountain town an hour north of Vancouver. Uh-huh. Right? And how many poets do you normally have on the lineup for Poet
usually
Next
got
Door?
like 12, 13 each month.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, local poets just getting up and reading their poems and
doing their thing.
Basically opening their hearts and bleeding on the page, on the stage.
Yeah. And it's that like, I don't know, I think of it as like the alchemy too, right? Like you write this like by yourself, and I don't usually write a bunch when I'm like super happy and things are going really, really well. Like I'm probably
there's not much to say.
I'm probably out there having a really nice time.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like the moments when it's not. That's where I'm like, ah, shit, like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And bringing that then to a stage, like it's one thing trusting yourself to write something. I actually used to have this really weird thing where I would write as well, and I'd be like looking over my shoulder, right? Like I was like, what if someone finds this? I'm like, what if someone sees this? Like, and I still get it now sometimes.
When you're writing something, a poem.
Like something like, not even a poem, more like a journaling, and then sometimes it'll turn into a poem, but it's this like, oh my God, who's gonna see this? Like, and I get scared. Like I get scared, and sometimes I'm like, I can't write that. And I'm like, who am I scared of here?
Yeah.
And like the answer is usually the mirror that's going to get held back up to you. Mm-hmm. And trusting yourself to write it down, and then trusting yourself to speak it as well is like, then it's real, baby. It's like,
so
then it's
real.
out there.
Yeah, and because then people, like I've had people come up to me in other places and be like, oh, you wrote that poem.
Right.
That had this impact on me. And again, it's that
it's
sense
so
of like, these poems are impacting people, particularly when read out loud.
Yes.
Yeah.
And do you feel like sometimes it's the most vulnerable ones, or the ones that were hardest to write, that have that response? Or
definitely the ones where I own my shit.
Yes.
Because I quite like, I mean, that's part of my process in the awakening journey, is to recognize and realize and acknowledge where I've done things that have hurt other people.
Yeah.
And take ownership of it. And I often do that through the means of poetry.
Yeah.
And then to read that out loud, those are the ones that impact people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And do you think it's the people who have felt like they've been on the receiving end of that?
Yeah.
They take it as
Yeah, totally. And I think also because I'm a woman writing about how I've fucked over men often.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Right? And we're in a stage right now where men have been getting a lot of grief for the last 10, 20 years
I'm
or
in
so.
a very interesting place right now.
Yeah, it's hard to be a man. You know?
It's fucking hard.
It's hard to be a man.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have fully examined all the ways in which women use power, or women abuse power with men. And so for me to get up there and, you know, like I humiliated a man once.
I remember that poem, that shifted something in me too.
Yeah, to get up and own it and say it.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. And again, it liberates me because I take ownership of my bullshit.
Yeah.
And I would never do that now. At the time, I was unconscious.
Yeah.
You know, at the time,
of course.
I didn't know. Yeah, it's such an interesting process. But I think there is a resurgence of poetry that is happening.
I'm so interested in, just with what you're saying about the owning of your shit within that, and with men as well, right? Like, I'm very conscious in the spells too, the spell aspect of it. I'm like, if I'm moving through something or reflecting on it, it needs to be done and it needs to move through me. But then what message do I want to put out to the world? Right? Because that has power. And in a performance setting too. Because I went through, I mean, it's in the book too, of those phases of like a lot of anger and like a lot of resentment towards like the masculine. And then now when I like go on stage, I'm like, this is true because I felt it, but it's also not where I want it to. I don't want that to be the story. Yeah. Right? Like, I don't want that to be the story. I want to change this narrative. Yeah. Or at least see it go in a way that's like, like there's one poem I wrote about walking home late at night in Glasgow and like feeling really scared and unsafe. And I'm very aware, like when I write that men are going to be seen as like predators. And it's like, no, like I want them to be protectors. And I like try to antidote the poem with that at the end, because I'm like, while this was true, like I think there's another way. Yeah. And there is power in what you put on a page and what you perform. So it's like, okay, pick your direction. Yeah. And that's the point I'm getting to right now of like, okay, like what world do I want to see? Really? Yeah. Like that's been like my whole 20s, and now it's like, okay, what world do I want to see? Yeah, right into the vision, like what we want to live into. I mean, now I know the power of it, right? Yeah. Now I know what can come true. Ooh, it's like I like that. So we create the art that brings forth the world we know is possible, the more beautiful world we all know is possible. Yeah, like how nice would that be? Yeah. I think that is an epic idea. Yes, let's all do it. Let's all do it. Laura, it's been such a treat to chat to you about your book. Yeah. Oh my goodness. You can find this on Amazon, right? It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. Yes. Places You Catch Yourself. It makes a fantastic gift. Buy 10 copies and send them out to all the people you love. Yes. Yep. Do that also in Squamish and Whistler's stores and coffee shops. Yeah. If you're in this area, you can definitely find it in person around the place. Yes, but likely online. Awesome. All right. Thank you, sister. Reflection. Yes. Reflect. Okay. Wow. Thanks for being my first guest on the couch. Oh my God, I love it. So that was Laura Sharp, author of Places You Catch Yourself. It's her first poetry book. It probably won't be her last. It's self-published, but I wouldn't be surprised if a publisher picks it up because it is a hotcake selling well. My reflections, my takeaways from this one. Yeah, as an artist, as a creator, I just love that idea of recognizing that things just need to move, that things just have, like, to surrender into the art and let the art move us, totally letting go of the need for it to be anything, and recognizing the power of the spell, the power of the word, the power of what we bring through. And it's definitely got me reflecting like on this novel writing process that I'm in right now, because I'm 4 days into a novel and there's other voices coming through and I'm like, ooh, do I move in that direction? So I'm going to feel into that. I'm going to surrender into that. Thanks for joining us on the couch here in Squamish. And this was Conversations with Kara-Leah. Blessings to you all.
Thanks for listening to Conversations with Kara-Leah, and trust that you enjoyed that nuanced deep dive into spirituality, sexuality, power, and awakening. If you love my take on the spiritual path and you're looking for more insights like this, then make sure you subscribe and like. You can also check out my website, Kara-Leah.com. That's KARALEAH.com, and subscribe to my weekly newsletter.